Welcome to For Feck's Sake Marketing Adventures with Carmel. So we're here again, me in Perth, and my amazing guest today is actually in Scotland, although she's not originally from Scotland. So we've got Pam on today, Pam Miller, and Pam's going to be talking to us about how to upskill to cope with a change in business. And we all know at the moment that things are changing very rapidly and sometimes without knowledge as to why or what's going to be tomorrow. Well, For Feck's Sake Marketing is all about bringing you tips, tricks, and insights, and of course, amazing people to interview all around marketing your business and the mistakes they've made, the hurdles that they've had to get over to do that. So if you're watching this on Facebook, give us a like. If you're watching it on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe so you can get access to more amazing people like this so that we can help support you to grow your business. Because I know that people that I get the privileged interview have had some of the same problems you have. And if they can get over it, well, so can you. So let's hop over to Pam. Welcome, Pam, and thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be on this.
My absolute pleasure. So you're originally from Namibia. Can you say it? Because I keep saying
Namibia. Yes.
Namibia.
Namibia.
And I've moved to Scotland. So you moved to a whole other country. You didn't know anyone. You used to have a training organization that was quite successful. And then you had to move here and you know nothing. So give us a little bit of background first of who Pam is and how she kind of even started training people. Where did all that come from?
Well, I did my nursing training. So I was originally a nurse and I loved it. But I soon got into community health, which is very much about educating people.
Yeah.
Plus, of course, you almost a sole worker as a community worker. And I had a team under me, but I had to do everything myself. So I went and did a master's in business because I just wanted to be able to take the next step. And as a nurse, you sort of reach the top, and unless you're managing, you're not going anywhere, which is true in a lot of careers. So I did a master's in business, which I loved. I just loved the breadth of understanding how things work together, of systems, of synchronicity, of understanding both sides, sort of the worker side and the management side. How do you get a successful business? And then I moved back to Namibia because I'd been in South Africa, and I moved back to Namibia, and I got more and more into training as well as business consulting. And I worked a lot with the more tangible businesses like hospitality and trained workers, but also Namibia was starting to set up its own system. So I got very involved with the training organizations in Namibia and helped set up the career paths, how the skills are set up, and recognizing prior skills, because so many people never had a chance to be educated in Africa, but they've been doing it for anything from 5 to 30 years. And you need to recognize that prior learning. And that recognition of prior learning really stood me in good stead now that I've moved.
Yeah. So obviously there was life circumstances that you decided to move to Scotland. So what was it like? We often come against something that goes, oh my God, I have to move. So can you give us a bit of an insight into what made you move from, you know, you're running a successful business, you're doing all this training. So why move to the other side of the world?
Well, Namibia's got a very small economy. We've only got about 2.5 million people in the whole country. So it was always a struggle. It was never a profitable business. It was always a developing business. So although the outcome was trained people, financially not that viable. And then we had the financial crash in the world, weren't that affected. Until about 4 or 5 years after that, suddenly the finance minister said, we're spending too much money. And the second biggest driver of the economy was the government. So when the government stopped spending money, the tap, it was what from one day to the next, the tap just switched off. There was no income. So I had to move. From a financial point of view, there was no way I could make this work. Yeah. And it had been a struggle all the time. I'd loved what I was doing, but as a business, it was hard. And you're saying the things you learn. sadly, one of the things I learned is don't think that because it's your home country, because you've got passion, that you can set up a successful business there.
And I don't think it's even to do with home country. Don't think just because you think it's a good idea that it'll actually be good elsewhere. So you moved to Scotland, of all places. You moved to Scotland, and what was different then? Like, how did you, cut ties and arrive in a new country and not knowing anyone? What did you do?
So I was devastated to have to leave Namibia. I mean, I can still weep about it. It was to have to leave the country of your birth is huge when you didn't want to. So I said to myself, fine, you've got to look at the positive. We can dwell on the negative because it exists, but you've got to look at the positive. So I got myself a little book and I wrote in there, what are the positive things about going to the UK? Because there's plenty. My mother was British. My father's family were British in 1820. So there's a long heritage of being British. Yeah. And one of the first things I put on there was go to Scotland. So although I had family in England, I didn't gel with the English people. There's definitely a cultural thing. We're very outspoken. We're very in your face, which the English are not. The English are very quiet and stiff upper lip, while we are far more passionate about things. So there's definitely a cultural problem there. Scotland is better. So that was one of the decisions. I had to look around and see where could I fit in, and Scotland was definitely better. When I arrived, I did an assessment. I had a little car. I put all my belongings in my car and I did a tour. I had enough money to do a 2-week tour, and I did a little tour to go and see where could I live. And it was an economic thing. Where can I earn a living? Because I'd already realized by now that the skills I had with my master's in business, my nursing, my vocational education qualification meant nothing here because I didn't have the experience.
Yeah.
And the experience I had didn't tick the boxes here. But funnily enough, I'd got a far better response from any job application in Scotland. So I did a tour and I went to see some employment agencies just to give me an insight and idea. But I also met people, and I think networking is one of the key skills. It's not only network for marketing, for selling, it's networking to create a net that you can work within. And that's what I did. And that is what saved me. I ended up staying in a guest house for free because as an entry-level worker, you actually can't afford to live in the big cities. The salaries here are not high enough for you to say, I'll rent a little place and work. No, you can't afford it. So I had free accommodation, no bills apart from transport, and I could then work.
Right. So it was a complete reinvention. I know we skipped over it, but you also were a TEDx speaker in your own country as well. So,
yes.
You had that, you had definitely had an awareness, you were being successful in what you were doing, but the monetary gains weren't there. And this is what happens, I think, with a lot of small businesses when they start. They're doing all this work. Like there's no doubt that you're working, you're doing all this work, but we sometimes forget that it has to become profitable in order for you to be sustainable. People say, oh, but I was doing it for the love of it. But if you can't earn the money to sustain yourself, and how brave it was to move to a whole other country. And we talked about like how to upskill to cope with change in business. So you obviously had to, and you had to be quite open in order to even start that networking process because you don't know anyone. Who the hell are you going to talk to? So give us some tips as to how you felt you had to upskill your networking, for example, or anything else you had to upskill in order for you to continue to be viable in a business sense. And I do know that there's an awesome little thing that happened to you too when you moved to Scotland, so you can share that as well.
Okay, so the first thing was you've got to be open. I come from a culture where it's not that we're not open because we're very in your face, but you don't admit to any weakness. You don't say, this is what I need. So I learned very quickly to ask for help. And that was quite an eye-opener to me to say, I need X. So for me to live in a guest house for free to do the night check-ins could be perceived as a huge come down from where I was. But on the other hand, it was such a gift. I learned to network, I met people, I got some good reviews because I was friendly, I could have a conversation with people, and it was a cheaper end of the range guest house. So these were travelers, people who wanted to engage. They weren't people who wanted just to be fed tea and scones and not talk to anyone. So my networking was fabulous there. But what was interesting was, because I didn't know how to apply for a job in the UK, because it's very different, I put my CV out everywhere. And going back to that whole recognition of prior skills, I put on that I speak Afrikaans. Now, my Afrikaans is not fabulous. I am not a linguist, but I can get by. Yeah. And I got a call saying, I see you speak Afrikaans. We're looking for somebody for a call center for Afrikaans. Now, working in a call center is definitely not my dream job. But I said, fine. I then have something on my CV. And I went to the call center with my Afrikaans, and it was wonderful to be recognized for something that other people here don't have.
Yeah.
And I shone in the call center in that I was happy to chat. I could chat. I mean, I used to call up people in South Africa and have a chat with them on a regular basis. That was my job. And I loved it. It was like, you're paying me to do this? Yeah. And I absolutely loved it. So I did it easily and well. Plus, culturally, they kept on saying, the people I spoke to on the phone said, oh, thank goodness, we don't understand these Irish people. And I'd say, they're Scottish. And yes. And one of the funny thing was that in Scotland, you say, I'm doing it just now, which means you're actually doing it at the present moment. Yeah. But when you say just now in South Africa, it means I'm putting you off and I'll do it when I feel like it.
All right.
So I had to explain to the call center people, you're giving them the message that you're actually not interested in doing it when in fact you're busy doing it. Yes. So there were a lot of cultural things that you come up against, and you just have to work through them. So and I don't think it's a bad idea that when you move, lower your standards. Just say, I need help. Let me start on something and I'll move up the ladder quickly. But let me get my foot in the door.
I think it's very much for people in business, especially. And to me, it's not even lowering standards. It's about, it's a quote I heard a long time ago from a mentor of mine, take the shortest route to the money. And it's like, if you have a skill in any way, shape or form, take the shortest route to the money to sustain you to do what it is you want to do. So it sounds exactly like that's what you've done. You've gone in, you've been vulnerable, and that is so true. It's that ability to say, hey, I need a bit of help here. And another story was years and years ago, I used to be a dibble for going and paying for people's dinner. You know, even if I couldn't afford it, I'd put it on my credit card because I loved giving people gifts. And somebody said to me, why do you do that? And I said, oh, I just love doing it. How good do you feel when you do it? Oh, I love it. Absolutely amazing. And they said, well, see those other people? They don't get the opportunity to feel like that because you steal it from them. And it always was really stuck in my head because people like to help. And when you're vulnerable and actually say, and it's not, I think there's a negative connotation to vulnerability. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, poor me. It's not, it's like, hey, I'm struggling at the moment. I need a little bit of help. That people want to help and they're only too glad to give you a step up. So to actually be able to ask for that is huge personal growth to be able to do that. That was number one. And number two, to move across the country, the world, not the country even, to start again is definitely a huge step and very brave. I also know that you also have met the love of your life since you've been there.
I have.
And that was something you didn't expect.
Well, funnily enough, coming from a small country, there's not the scope for meeting your partner.
Right.
And being a strong woman didn't predispose me to being dating material. So one of the things I put in my book, and I might not even have written it, but on my little list of the positives of the UK was possibly I could go dancing.
Yeah.
Because I like dancing, but in a small country, unless you're 22 and gorgeous, you don't go dancing. So being early 50s, At the time that I came over, I'm now 56, so it's been about 5 years. I said to myself, there's the potential to meet nice people of my age group and do things for me. And at the guest house, some guys came in to do some renovations. 2 brothers. The one was not dating material, but the other one was definitely a keeper. And that's the one I got. So that was quite interesting, because I haven't dated in years in Namibia. And all of a sudden I met a man, and we're together now. And he has been absolutely fabulous. And a godsend in lockdown, because we just moved from Edinburgh to Aberdeen. He came back to a job he'd had before, which was a good thing. He's due to retire soon. We said, let's do this, bolster your pension fund before you retire. And then lockdown came before I could get a job. So I've spent this. And I think one of the things I always knew, opportunity arises from chaos. There's always an opportunity. So since lockdown started, I've been on this journey to say, fine, if I can't go out and work, let me do the online stuff. And this is where I'm getting back into my mentoring, because I've always loved it. And now I'm formalizing it. We've got a course set up, we've got a group set up, and I need to now convert that to a paying business, because I have so much to offer women of our age group who are feeling, what now? What's next? There's plenty next. Plenty next.
And I love that, because we're women in our 50s. I quite often talk about, I'm the grey hair granny. If I could do it, so could you. And people look at me and go, what do you mean you're grey hair granny? I have got grey hair and I am a grandmother.
Yes.
And no matter about moving the country and reinventing yourself, but to do it as you're getting older, it can be quite scary. So, it's great to do that. So now you're starting to build that new online business from all the experience you've had. Now, I know people that are watching this will say, oh my God, I don't want to start again. I don't want to do. So what kind of skills, you've already talked about being open and the ability to ask for help, but what other skills do you need to build both externally and internally in order to really deal with that change and, in business, and to be able to cope with it? It's the coping of it that sometimes people don't do. They, we all know you can go and put a wheelbarrow somewhere, but it's the coping of having to put down that shovel and say, no, I have to pick up a wheelbarrow now. What are the skills to cope with that, other than being open and asking for help?
I think recognizing your capabilities. So many of us don't have the confidence because we're dwelling on what we can't do, or our nervousness, or what we perceive. So what I did for my confidence was, I actually sent the same message to about 30 of my friends or people who know me. And I said, if I were to start an online coaching business, what qualities and skills and attributes do you think I bring? And everyone answered me. There's not one person who didn't answer me. And I then had an array of things where I could look at it analytically rather than emotionally, and say, hold on, this is my repertoire of skills. This is my asset bank. These are the things I do. So take a step back. Stop dwelling on your emotional response to things and rather look at it more analytically. And there is a basic process of making a decision. And the first one is assess. Then out of those, I planned. I said, fine, so what could I do? And now I'm implementing it. So the online mentoring is really coming from that. So first one is take a step back. The second one is look at the skills you have, not from a corporate point of view. We're all taught to look at things from a corporate point of view. Do I have management skills? Do I have supervisory skills? Do I have debtors skills? Start looking at your skills from a completely different perspective, because coping doesn't come from your qualifications. It comes from, they call them the soft skills, but they are not weak skills. Being able to cope depends on your resilience, on your ability to take a step back, on your ability to go and weep and then come back and say, right, I'm done weeping. I'm now going to move forward. So look at the things you've done. How many times you've had to change career? How many times you've had to move and make a new group of friends? How many times you've had to admit, okay, so perhaps that wasn't such a good idea. Let's move on. That recognition of your internal skills is really important, because use those, work on your strengths. We often dwell on our weaknesses, and you've got to take a step back from that and say, sure, I'm horrible at this.
It can be a challenge to do that when you're in that frame of mind. One of the things there that I would even add to when you said, look at the skills you have and look at the skills that you would need to learn to do that. So for you to go online, for example, if you had no online experience, or you had never done a Zoom call, or you haven't built an email list, or you don't know how to do a video or whatever like that, well, then obviously then you can say, well, there's skills I need to learn. And as I said earlier, the shortest route to the money is, what can I do in the meantime to pay for me to learn that so that I can up level this? Yeah.
And that's something. So I'm actually doing two things. The shortest route to the money was something I've got in the background, which is I sell organic products because I love them. I've always done essential oils. I've always dabbled in making my own creams and in doing things, because I recognize as a nurse, I don't want chemicals and toxins in my bodies. So on the side, I sell those because I love them.
Yeah.
But it also gave me a passion to talk. So you're talking about being online. That is a huge leap. The skills you need to learn to be online, huge. Yes. So
I hear you, because I have to do the same. And sorry to pause you for a sec. I love that you say I do this on the side, because so many people in small business have a side gig, or they have a full-time job, and this project is their side gig.
Yes.
And that's okay. People need to know that that's not a failure. That's not a whatever.
No.
It's just literally different ways of getting the income in to actually leverage. And when we're really clever, we can leverage things. So my background is hospitality. So there was several times I went back to a job. I went back to a job to earn the money to do the next step, because I could do that job standing on my left leg, hanging out of the light shade, because I had done it for so long. So I didn't have to learn a new skill. So what you've done before, if you can do something similar, like selling the oils or something that you can kick that up a bit, earn some more to do the next step, is really vital. So from what you're saying about online and starting to do that, the world has just shrunk so much with all of this stuff that's happened, because people have to go online, they have to do this, but that has made the world so much smaller. What do you believe, or what do you observe the use of video is in all of that now?
Huge. I think we're getting to meet and know people that we would never have known before.
I know, look at you and I. Oh my God.
I know. and I look at you and I think, you are so similar to me. You're gardening. I saw you in your garden the other day. I'm exactly the same, except
with
I'm
my
in
bananas.
Yes, your chickens. All of those things are things that I love. So I, in summer, often do lives about the garden. Not because I'm a great gardener. I'm not. If I grow 3 items, I'm ecstatic and I'll mention them. But I've learned through gardening to celebrate the successes, to talk about things that I enjoy, because if people are going to get to know me, they need to know who Pam is, what my value system is, because in real life, your friends are people with the same value system.
Mostly so. And just as you mentioned the garden, I think the garden is an absolutely amazing metaphor for all things business, because you don't just go out and put a seed in the ground and go, right, there we go. It's a carrot. It takes a process. It needs some rain. It needs some sunshine, probably a little less sunshine where you are, in fairness. It needs a little bit of everything like that. It needs time. It actually needs to be in the right earth in the first place, because if you put that carrot seed in the crack of the pavement, it's not going to grow into a big, healthy carrot. And I think it's really a great metaphor for business. So if you get a business idea and you just got to throw it out there and hope to God it's going to work, and you don't have a strategy behind it, well, it's not going to work. It's not going to grow into a sustainable. And I see this so often with new small businesses, that they get burnt out, because they're definitely, as I said earlier, doing the work. They're doing so much work, but they haven't got these soft skills, as you call them, to cope. Because eventually, like anything, if you keep doing this and the friction keeps going, of course you're going to burn out. Oh my God, it's just it's inevitable and it's not sustainable. Because if you think about building the Empire State Building, for example, everybody knows that you can actually go online and find all the dimensions, the everything, how much stuff they used, how they built it. You could actually go and find that. So somebody could technically, they'd need a lot of skill, I know, go and build another Empire State Building. But if they, for a moment, they decided to do it cheaper and they cut down on the concrete in the foundations, and then they started building and got halfway through the building, they'll soon realize that the foundations were so important. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is what you end up with.
Yes.
And this, again, is another metaphor for business. We sometimes push to one side the importance of building the foundations. And I see it too often, and I know you've seen it too, Pam, where people come in all gung-ho to do their business, and they do exactly like we've done. I know I have. I've wasted so much money and so much time and so many courses and so many everything. But what's happened is I became a course junkie. Yes. I have my what I call the shelf development. So I have everything on my shelf.
Yeah.
And when I became a course junkie, of course, I wasn't putting the foundation in myself. I was going back and forth to a job to pay other people for the courses. Now, I'm not for one moment saying you shouldn't pay other people for a course.
Yes.
But I've made a rule now that I will earn whatever it is that I need to earn to pay for that course first. And I will only do a course that's going to add to my foundation or add to the next level. I don't want to do the course way up here yet, because I haven't got the foundation yet. Does that make sense?
And completely. And I would add to that, there are different types of people. You mentioned you've got to do your strategy and so on. Now, technically, I can do strategy. I've got my whole master's in business. I can lay it out, but I never follow it. I'm more of a trier and tester, but I then evaluate. And I'm evaluating against my perceived line of strategy and saying, how close am I? Let me do it again. Let me do it again. And for me, that incremental growth from just trying something, your first bad live, your first bad video, it might not as a product tick all the boxes, but it got you out there. It got you talking. You got some feedback, and you then adapt to that, and you adapt and you adapt. And you rather have that whole Kaizen approach of small improvements, but you do need to know where you're heading.
Well, it's having the benchmarks, isn't it, of going back, well, where was I 6 months ago to where am I now? Because then you will see the improvement. And you're so right. The first time I ever made a video, it was literally 27 hours of blood, sweat, and I cried over this keyboard. I bawled my eyes out over it, I tell you. And my record for making a video now is 5 minutes. Now, I don't do that all of the time. Obviously, there's a bit more depth to some of them, but from 27 hours, and it was purely that. I think what people do is they try something and they make it good, bad, right, or wrong. Oh, I tried that, so I'm never going to do it anymore.
Yes.
I started looking at, I'll try something, and I go, well, was it effective or ineffective towards the goal I want? Ineffective? Was it something I needed to tweak? Was it something I needed to learn? Did I need somebody else's support? If it was effective, freaking great. Now let me polish it up, make it even better, and recreate it. Because when we make a good, bad, right, or wrong, then we call it a failure and we don't do it again.
Exactly.
I mean, what was Edison was 100 times he tried, he failed, and it was 101 that there was a light bulb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think what you've illustrated here, because like your first video was 27 hours of sweat and tears. My first video was finding the button on the Facebook Live and saying, is this the one? And I did it. So I think what we need to recognize is our skills, our passions, our abilities. I'm more than happy to speak. Put me on a stage and I'll speak about anything. It's like I turn into a different person. But for us to get our personalities across, but also to use our personalities, we need to, one, to a certain extent, just do it, but evaluate constantly. So we could start off like you did, 27 hours of blood, sweat, and tears before you created it. Well, for me, I've probably spent the same 27 hours, but in creating new videos, learning from things.
My one was I was editing it and everything. I was marrying it all together to do all that. No, I've no problem doing it live. Oh my God.
Well, that's the thing. I refuse to do those because I don't have the time to do them yet. If I get good, if I know what it is I want to edit, I might do it. So you need to look at who you are. So part of adapting to change is saying, what can I do? What am I good at? What am I likely to keep doing? I'm not likely to keep editing videos, so I just haven't started.
I didn't think I was either, but I've just finished editing a course. And that is actually very relevant. What do I like doing and what am I like? There is always an element of discomfort in growing and learning. And I think embracing change, there's an element of discomfort in it. But what I would say is when you say, what do I like doing? What did I struggle with before that I can do well now? Because what you struggled with before is quite often what somebody else is looking for now, and you've already found the solution.
Exactly.
Number one. And number two is, I would really, really highlight this to people. It's something I discovered. When you find yourself saying, oh, that's just easy for me, or doesn't everyone do that?
Yes.
That's quite often an innate skill. So to give you an example, for me, in hospitality, people used to say, how do you deal with those complaints? And I used to go, it's good old-fashioned Irish hospitality. What's wrong with you? Doesn't everyone do that? But years later, I've realized I just have an ability to build trust and rapport quite easily especially when I'm face to face with somebody. So I went, oh, that's actually a skill that I can use and hone it when I used to run face to face events to make people feel comfortable, to make them feel included. So it was actually a skill, although I had pushed it away as doesn't everyone do that. Whenever you feel or find yourself doing, oh, that's easy, that's probably one of your secret superpowers that you haven't recognized it as a superpower yet.
Yes, and you need to recognize not only is it a superpower, but you could leverage it. You do it automatically. It's as you said, an innate thing. How do you leverage something innate? But you probably can. And I think you're right. We don't recognize it, and we need to.
And that's why it's good to get feedback from externally, but be careful where you get your feedback from. It has to be feedback relevant to what it is you want to do. Your family with the best of intentions always have said to me, like, why don't you just go get a job? Or my dad used to say, are you changing jobs again? Oh my God. Because he was sure people will see your resume and they say you had too many jobs, they won't hire you. But every time I was getting a new job, I was actually improving myself. So I'm aware of the time, darling. I think we could talk for ages. But what I'd like to just check in with you. So what is your next steps for you to move forward with this business?
Everything that I've learned over the 38 years I've been working, I'm putting into a course, I'm putting into a retreat, because it's not only about success, it's about finding happiness and about making the change to put yourself on the path to happiness. And I know how that change works. So it doesn't matter what it is people want to do, I can help them navigate that decision-making, that oomph needed to say, you know what, I'm in my 50s, I don't want to die like this. I want to be somebody different. And so the book, the course, the retreat, that's all in progress.
Awesome. And what kind of skills, and not so much the coping skills, but what kind of ways do you think that you will use to market that? Like, will it be through social media? How do you think you could market that to give it that oomph?
Well, one, social media, but also a lot of personal networking. People buy from people they know. So I need to make sure, I need to make sure that Pam is being seen. Some people will look at her and say, I wouldn't buy a thing from her. And that's fine. They're not my market. But other people will look and say, you know what, I like her. She's practical. She's down to earth. She can be funny. She can be hard. But I like that. That's somebody I would trust to tell me where to go. But if I don't put myself out there, they can't make that decision.
That's number one, the first step. You can be the best at whatever you do. Absolutely, 1,000,000% top notch, the best at whatever you do. But if nobody knows about you, well, then how are they ever going to find you? Cool. So Pam, I need to finish up because as I said, I'm aware of the time. So if anybody watching this does want to contact you or anything like that, what's the best way for them to do that?
Okay, so Facebook is the easiest, or LinkedIn. Pam Miller,
Yeah.
probably in Aberdeen. So you just look for me, and my photo that you put on the front
ad.
of this.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I look pretty
Beautiful.
much the same. Yeah, so either LinkedIn or Facebook, Pam Miller, and there I am.
Beautiful. And we'll keep in contact as well. Pam, I want to say thank you so much for getting up so
Thank
early
you.
in the morning for you in Scotland. And I'm here in my afternoon here in Perth in Western Australia. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. And guys, if you want to connect with Pam, she's let you know how to connect with her on social media. Thank you for joining us on Perfect Sake Marketing Adventures. And make sure that you are hitting subscribe on that button so you can get more of these interviews, insights, tips, and tricks to help you overcome any of your stumbling blocks too. For now, it's bye from me.
Bye-bye.